What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Back Pocket Podcast, where we did terribly last week. Let's not confuse ourselves with real NFL analysts like Drewski and Barstool Big Cat and all these people that are really smart on ESPN. We are not that. We are just humble podcasters that like to talk about football instead of Shadur Sanders. That was a terrible intro, but I'm Dylan Shalom. I'm here with Charlie Nidell and Serge Kadali, and we're here to talk about week two of the NFL, where just anything could happen. The league is just as predictable as anyone else could have imagined. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, excited. Also, like Dylan said, very disappointing week specifically for me. I went 6-10. Unfortunately, I think week one is the week where we all try and galaxy brain. This team is gonna have a huge breakout year. This team, and we always get it wrong. But that's the beauty of the NFL season. So much parity. I think week two will be a lot better for me though.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, week one is the learning week. Week one, nobody knows what's really about to happen. You can have all the predictions that you want, but at the end of the day, teams change in the off season in ways that you just don't see in the depth chart, in ways that you don't see in the off season. And they show you that, like Daniel Jones and the Colts. Who could have seen
We
that one
we we don't
coming?
talk about it.
And I only bring that up. I don't even bring that up as a from a Dolphins perspective. I bring that up from a Colts perspective. We all did pretty badly. That being said, I do think we're still, reliable enough sources moving forward because we all had bad week ones last season and rebounded and all finished really, really well by the end of the season.
Yeah, that's something that's definitely true. We all did really well down the stretch because once you
Mhm.
watch football, you get a gauge of what everyone kind of is. It's easier to do these predictions, so hopefully that'll
Oh,
strike
I
true.
lied. We were really, really good week one last year, but we were
Were we?
terrible weeks 2 through 4. So
Yeah.
if that gives anything, or really weeks 2 through 5. But yeah, I started last season 13-3. That's wild.
Damn.
Yeah, that is wild.
But let's go to the Thursday night game in Green Bay, fresh off a win against their divisional rivals in Detroit. They take on the Washington Commanders, who also won a divisional game against the New York Giants. And Charlie, you watched this game in its entirety between the Commanders and the Giants. What are your thoughts on Washington? Who do you have winning this game?
I actually didn't watch this game in its entirety at
No?
all. I didn't watch close to the entire game. I had a club soccer game during the game.
So you got a big win.
It was a pretty big win, much bigger than the Giants that day. Um, yeah, my thoughts on that game were the Giants looked offensively really, really similar to last year. I didn't see much of an improvement. When you've got a player like Malik Neighbors, who, as unbiased as I can be, can do everything you want from a receiver on the football field, he needs to see the ball more. He said it, the media's saying it. I'll say it. Malik Neighbors needs to touch the ball more. That being said, they could not get the running game going. The Commanders' front line was really strong. The Giants' offensive line was pitiful. So no matter what the Giants try to do offensively, I'll try and stay away from the Giants. The Commanders had an answer for it. The Commanders look strong defensively. Again, I think most of that was in part, or most of that was due to the Giants' lack of offensive output. Offensively, the Commanders didn't wow me. Um, they had a strong start, 17 in the first half, I believe, but then failed to score for most of the fourth quarter, or for most of the second half, and finished with only 21. Yeah, 14 at the end of the half, and only 7 coming late in the fourth quarter. And I wasn't impressed. And the Commanders are a team that all offseason I've been picking to have a second season regression behind Daniels and whatever new things they've brought in. I've been picking them to have a bit of a second season slump. Um, and I don't think they proved me wrong in week one. Krosky Merritt looked good, a guy that they've been really excited for all season, but overall they didn't wow me. So this is an easy Packers pick for me. This is relatively easy.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at that, I'm gonna go the Packers Lions game. Probably the team that impressed me the most week one, or at least maybe changed my mind the most week one, was the Green Bay Packers because they went against the Lions team who, I don't know if I said it on the channel, they were my Super Bowl pick this year, and they kicked their ass all game long. I think this 27-13 score really isn't justice to what they did, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And bear in mind, this was a team that, although Micah Parsons played, he was not a big factor in that game at all. Like he wasn't playing that many snaps. Snaps. They were trying to ease him into it with the back injury, and they looked dominant. And I know cornerback is a bit of an issue, but I think everywhere else you look on that field, this is an elite defensive unit. You have two amazing safeties. Obviously, you know what Xavier McKinney is, but Evan Williams, someone who had a very under the radar, very good rookie season, started off this year exactly as you wanted him to with an interception of Jared Goff. Obviously, love the linebacking room. Defensive line, Lucas Van Ness looks good, which was a big surprise. And obviously, you have Rashawn Gary on the other side as well before Micah comes in. And I think going for Washington, I agree with you, Charlie. That offense wasn't that impressive. It was more the defense that really I thought looked good. I think Green Bay are gonna go in. Oh, they're hosting Washington. I think they're gonna make another statement here with a win.
And I will say, I kind of glazed over the Packers on that one, but the Packers are a team that, conversely to the Commanders, I've actually been really high on all offseason, centered around my preseason predictions, and I've got the Packers in the NFC Championship game. And that seemed like a bold pick even to me 2 weeks ago. But yeah, you were right. You were right, Serge. They dominated one of the best teams in the NFL last year, if not the best for very large parts of the season.
And this was a fantastic game by Green Bay. By no stretch of the imagination did I imagine that Detroit were going to fall into a trap where they were kind of just stagnant on both sides of the ball. The offense looked completely out of whack without Ben Johnson calling the shots, and the defense, likewise, without Aaron Glenn, kind of folded under nothing. And I don't even think it was as much Green Bay out scheming them or outplaying them. I think Detroit kind of collapsed in on themselves, which is why I'm not as confident in a Green Bay win over the Commanders this week. I am going to pick it because like you guys said, I don't think Washington looked particularly good in their win. But they did have some positive signs. Debo Samuel went out there and played actual football as compared to what we imagined. I believe Surge called him Fat Bo last episode.
Okay, okay. I
But
I
apologize. I
was not expecting
apologize.
Debo was returning kicks for
yeah,
Washington.
no,
He is not fast enough for that.
yeah, he looked competent, and I think having him and McLaurin, now that we know that he can actually play football, will be a very dangerous one-two gut punch. But the run game isn't good enough. The defense is really old. I'm not moved by Green Bay, but I'm picking Green Bay to win this game.
Yeah, and an interesting stat. I mean, the Lions ran the ball 22 times for 46 yards.
Yeah,
Holding a team like the Lions and a
Mhm.
running back like Jameer Gibbs. I mean, Monty's always been a, ground and pound running back where he gets not necessarily the most yards per carry. But Jameer Gibbs is a big hitter. That's what he does. That's what his career is built off of. And he was even worse than Monty with 9 for 19. It just, nothing worked for the Lions.
let's move over to two other teams in the NFC East, one of which we talked about briefly. The other one, Dallas, at home against the Giants. Dallas played a good game against Philly. Before the lightning strike, they were in distance the entire game. It was only a 4-point game. But where do we feel these two teams lie with each other, and who wins the game?
Yeah, this is definitely an interesting one because I think the Cowboys looked a lot better than the Giants last week. And that being said, I'm gonna take the Giants. I'm a Giants fan. I'm gonna back the guys to go out there and beat what I think is a really weak Dallas team. Um, but Dallas was playing well. Dallas held the Eagles to a really, really competitive game, which I don't think many people expected. And the Giants then on the other side didn't hold the Commanders to any sort of competitive game. And it wasn't close. But I think the Giants are going to figure something out this week. Their defense did look really strong for a vast majority of the game in week one. And I think they're going to give Dak Prescott and Javonte Williams fits. And they won't be as easy to walk over as the Eagles were, who were, missing Jalen Carter after his, first play incident, we'll call it. Um, I don't think that the Giants' defensive line will give as much as the Eagles did. And then it's a matter of whether Russ or, Neighbors or Scatabo or Tracy can move the ball offensively. And I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Dallas here. And Dallas, I feel like they pleasantly surprised me on opening night. I think it was a team that I didn't really know how they were going to respond to the Micah trade, how that defense was going to respond, and it looked jittery early on, but they really tightened up later on in that second half and really started to see some guys flash, like Marshawn Nealand. I thought had a really good game. I thought Ezraku started to flash later on in the game, and they've got a bunch of guys that I think are solid enough pass rushers. Obviously, no Micah, but I think it's far from the worst defensive line type unit that some people have been talking about them as. And going against the Giants offensive line, which without Andrew Thomas, which seems like so often now for them, looks like one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL. I'm going to assume that he's not playing. I'm going to assume that he's not playing just because that's what I'm led to believe with him at this point. So for that reason, I'm going to go Dallas. Obviously, I thought their offense looked phenomenal, which was as I expected. That offensive line is going to be great with adding Tyler Booker to an already pretty good interior. And then Dak Prescott proved that he is still a very good quarterback. And when you give him another weapon like Pickens, it's just going to open up the field so much more for CeeDee Lamb, like we saw on Thursday night. And hopefully he'll bring his hands with him this time.
I'm glad you brought up the defensive line in Dallas because not only did I think Nealand and Houston played very well on the edges, Osa Odighizuwa, over the course of the last 2 or 3 years now, has made a case for himself to be one of the best defensive tackles in the league. And I thought that his performance against Saquon Barkley in the running game was a big reason why Philadelphia couldn't run away with this game from the start.
Mm,
No
mhm.
pun intended. The Giants defensively are one of the better units in the league. We knew that coming in. We even saw that against the Jaden Daniels led Washington Commanders. Although Abdul Carter did decide to play closeout 3-point
It
defense
was a
on
weird
like
play, but it
yeah,
got the job done,
it
right?
did
You
it
know,
did it did, but like it's just I don't know what he was doing, but it
he
worked.
looked really good
He did
otherwise,
he
though.
did look
He's
very he did look very good. Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns,
Barnes
the
is so
linebacking
good.
core. It's a very good defense, but the offense looked just as bad as I expected it to, even worse with the offensive line's performance. And I think the Cowboys just have that little bit more stable edge on both sides of the ball, whereas the Giants are just kind of a defense with neighbors on one side of the ball. So I'm gonna go with Dallas to win the game.
Is it a crazy bold pick to say that I think there's like a world where Brian Burns leads the NFL in sacks this year?
It's not.
I could see it. It's
I could
possible.
see it. I mean, I would figure if you're gonna pick an edge rusher on that team, it would be Carter, but it could be anyone.
No, I just think Burns because look, now he's gonna have virtually no attention on him with Lawrence and Thibodeau. Thibodeau, who also looked pretty good, I think, and Carter. And you almost forget that Burns is an incredible pass rusher. And he already has 2 sacks through week 1 and just looked really dominant. And he's one of the worst guys to leave one-on-one on the edge in the NFL. That's the only reason I say it. I don't know if that's you know, plausible or not because they'll split sacks, but throw it out there. We can move on though.
Yeah, let's talk about the Steelers and the Seahawks. Both teams came out of very, very tightly contested games with different results. The former Jet Failure Bowl between Rodgers and Darnold. It'll be very interesting to see who comes out on top. But Serge, you watched the whole Steelers versus Jets game, and you probably have more thoughts than anyone here. So I'll let you take point.
Yeah, I mean, with Pittsburgh, I mean, obviously they find ways to win like no other team in the NFL, especially against their middling competitors. Um, their defense though, I think their defense looked very, very shaky, and I think it was a unit that came out very hyped. Obviously, a few really good veterans that they got in the offseason, Jalen Ramsey, Darius Slay. Ramsey looked it was a mixed bag of performances because he really showed up in that second half. While in the first half, he kind of looked like he was there to be had in coverage. Darius Slay, I can't lie, I'm really not moved by that signing at all. And then more importantly, their run defense. Their run defense really struggled. Granted, I do think they're going to be going against, unironically, one of the best rushing offenses in the NFL this year. But I think also at the same time, you have a Seattle offensive line that has made a few moves on the interior, namely Gray Zabel, and I think they're going to be able to run the ball pretty well. Meanwhile, Aaron Rodgers, great week 1 performance, but going against a Mike McDonald unit in week 2, a team that he really struggled against last season with the Jets, I think that's really going to show up. And I think honestly, Seattle's defense looked as good as advertised as I thought they would be this year, except for one guy, Tariq Woolen, who apparently could be benched. Apparently, Mike McDonald said it is not out of the question. And I do think they'll still be a great unit with or without him. So I'm going to go with Seattle for this one.
Yeah, this one's a bit of a toss-up for me. I mean, obviously, both of these games, again didn't get a chance to watch a lot of the week 1 action because I was out. But I just looking at the numbers, I mean, that's the Steelers' offense was firing, but virtually no run game. And the Jets have a good front seven, but not a like blow you out of the water front seven. This is more due to the Steelers' starting running back being Jalen Warren. And that's not, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if sooner rather than later Caleb Johnson's their guy.
Kenneth
Um,
Gainwell was a big part of that rushing
yeah,
attack.
and Gainwell had 7 carries as well. So I think that while the Steelers' offense looked good, honestly, I think it was another big part of the Jets' defense just maybe not being as good this year as they've been in past years. Again, I don't know what happened. I didn't watch the game. Um, but 32 point or 34 points, 4 passing touchdowns for the quarterback who I don't know if he did that all of last season for them. And week one he goes and does it against them. On the other side, I think the Seahawks looked okay. I did catch some of the Seahawks game, and I really liked the split backfield of Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker. And Smith and Jigba was incredible, but he was about their only offensive piece because I think he had 125 of Darnold's 150 yards, which is a little crazy. Uh, I am gonna go. This is a tough one. I'm gonna take the Steelers at home. I think home field advantage in Pittsburgh has always been strong. The Seahawks didn't score much. The Steelers did. I'll take the Steelers.
I'm also going to pick Pittsburgh to win this game, mostly because I don't feel convinced that Seattle have the ability to get to pressure to the passer. I saw a lot of times where Brock Purdy in the game against the Seahawks in week one was able to kind of waltz around and make plays outside of the pocket and step up into the pocket. He kind of was able to have his way. And a lot of it was checkdowns, a lot of it was weak tackling, and you talked about Reek Woolen not being able to play a good game of football. I don't think Seattle's defense is quite what it's made out to be. On the flip side, you know how I felt about Pittsburgh coming into this season. I didn't think they stood a chance even at making the playoffs with the way that they were constructed. I still don't think that I'm going to fall for the Aaron Rodgers performance because let's be so real about this for a second. This is a 40-something-year-old man off of two Achilles, what the Achilles tear in an early recovery, and then he was not capable of playing a decent season of football in New York. I don't think that he's just going to transform because he's playing in an Arthur Smith run offense or anything like that. But I do think that Pittsburgh's home field advantage, their defense, and my lack of confidence in Seattle is a big enough reason to take them to win this game. So I will go Pittsburgh. But let's go to the, in my opinion, lock of the week between the Titans and the Rams. It's in Tennessee, but Tennessee looked pretty brutal. I think we could all pretty quickly and easily say Rams take this, right?
Yeah, Rams win this one. I feel bad for Cam Ward going against two of the best defensive fronts in the NFL back-to-back weeks. I actually didn't think he looked that bad against Denver, but when you weigh in just his supporting cast, Calvin Ridley had a number of brutal drops, and I think other than him, there's just not another trustworthy weapon in that offense. So, yeah, I think Los Angeles win this one pretty comfortably.
Yeah, I also think the Rams are going to win this one. I don't think it's going to be necessarily a super, super comfortable win. I do actually like the Titans. Not a lot, I will preface, but they have a pretty weak division, so it's easy to like, a little bit each of those teams, Titans, Colts, and Jaguars. I think they have them all around, unironically, 6 or 7 wins this season. Um, and the Rams didn't impress me either. They impressed me defensively, but uh, they only scored 14 and they were losing up until the third quarter, and the Texans just looked off. The Texans didn't look like they were really in sync week one. So I am gonna go Rams here, but not in a super, I mean, it won't be a super close game, but I don't think the score line will reflect that. I think the score line will be within a couple scores.
Let's talk about the Bills and the Jets now,
Let's
who
do it.
this will
Mhm.
be a really interesting one. We all saw what happened on Sunday Night Football. And I think we all, to a degree, saw what happened in the Jets game, where it was high scoring, defenses really weren't too much of a factor. Does this like work for the Jets to be an offensive team, do you think? Does this like make them more of a threat against these bigger and more difficult teams?
Yeah.
100% it does not.
Mm,
No. Uh, there's no way that we think that Justin Fields is capable of just going out and beating the Bills on I know, look, I know Zach Wilson beat the Bills. I'm sure Sam Darnold beat the Bills, but to a certain degree, I potentially think Justin Fields is worse than the both of them were as Jets quarterbacks. I do believe that.
really?
I don't think Justin Fields is a good passer of the ball at all. And maybe to say that he was
Worse than
worse
Zach
than Zach
Wilson?
Wilson as a Jet is a reach. And I can say that. That is a reach. He definitely is not. But I don't think he provides this Jets offense with what they need. And really the Jets whole team with what they need. And that's like a true figurehead, a true leader at quarterback. And Fields is not that. And I think we can all, to a certain degree, we all know that. And we can all admit to that. Nobody out here thinks that Justin Fields is going to go win a Super Bowl with the Jets.
Mhm.
He's fine. Maybe for a year, maybe for two. Maybe he's serviceable for that long. Maybe not. But I don't think that there's a way that he actually helps them in any one game versus the other. They lost to the Steelers. They don't stand a chance against the Bills.
Hmm. So I picked the Jets week one against the Steelers. I think it was partly due to obviously my new season of hope and also obviously the fact that me and Dylan, I think, both agreed that we hated the Steelers roster construction. Um, Even though I was wrong, I came out feeling probably more hopeful than I've ever thought I would feel about the Jets offense. And I think part of it I was right about. I pat myself on the back for this. The offensive line is just as good as I thought it would be. I think that interior, even after losing Elijah Vera Tucker, has looked phenomenal with John Simpson and Joe Tippmann have looked great at guard. And you have Josh Myers, who's been he's not a great center, but he's serviceable. And the most I think impressive thing, Armin Membu. I think I've told you guys about it so many
Membo.
times off camera. Membo, I apologize. Zero pressures allowed on 26 snaps. I think 21 of them were against TJ Watt. I don't think you can have a better performance than he had in his first career start ever. He looked completely solid in pass protection. They were running behind him a lot, and not actually that much because TJ Watt's side, but they were comfortable running behind him as well, and he was phenomenal in both phases of the game. Our offensive line looked great, and it really set up the platform for Justin Fields to have, I thought, one of his best career games as a pro. Was I believe I don't know how I think he was like the sixth highest graded passer by PFF, but if you looked at him, he looked probably better than I've ever seen him look managing the pocket. He never really looked someone who was off schedule, didn't really feel the rush coming in the same ways that I saw him with Chicago and with Pittsburgh. He looked really composed as a passer, and he had a completely great game.
But
Now,
he loses so much aura for wearing two gloves.
okay, it was a
That's
rainy game. It
criminal.
was it was a rainy game. I think we can give him the benefit of the doubt. If he does it again week two against Buffalo, I will agree with you. But going into this game against the Bills, it's really interesting to me because I actually no, look, I'm picking the Bills to win this. I want to preface that I'm picking the Bills to win this. But if you ask me if I think the Jets will cover the spread, not that I'm a betting guy, by the way, I would say we will because I think this Buffalo defense what we saw them do against Baltimore is exactly the thing that the Jets will do, except on inhibitors, because Justin Fields is probably, I would say, a top three rushing quarterback in the league. And we saw on Sunday Night Football how much trouble Joey Bosa had with containing Lamar Jackson when they do those read options. Fields didn't look perfect deciding when to keep and when to not keep, but I think he is someone that is going to I think he's going to do a better job of that week two, and I think he's going to have a big game running the ball. I think Brees Hall, who looked like rookie Brees Hall last year. I think he's also going to have a great game against a still pretty weak Bills interior defensive line who still doesn't really know how to stop the run. But at the end of the day, I think Josh Allen is also sadly due for a huge game against Brandon Stevens where he loves that back shoulder fade to the sideline. We see Brandon Stevens. Ravens fans told us about it all offseason. One of the worst ball skills of any corner in the NFL. And I think that's really going to come back to haunt us against a quarterback that exposes that like none other. So Buffalo will win this one, but it'll be close. It will be
You think it'll
close.
be like a one score game?
I
Fully.
think it'll be a one score game. I mean, the last few years we've played Buffalo in a one score game, and I think this team is better than 2024. So
I'm also going to pick the Bills to win this game. And while I don't know if it'll necessarily be a one score game or a close game, I do think I've found a newfound respect for the Jets because if they can manage to stay healthy, which is a huge if
Mhm.
because it's the Jets. Everything always gets messed up one way or another. The defense was never really the concern, and the defense being the concern for the game against Pittsburgh is a huge benefit to them, in my opinion, because you have now two cornerstone tackles, a quarterback who seemingly can play football, and a run game. And that's all you need to make the playoffs in the AFC on the offensive side of the ball. If you have a good defense and you have that, I don't really get too concerned about not having too many weapons to throw to because if you can keep your quarterback upright and you can run the football, you're going to win some games against bad teams. Now, as far as the Bills go, they just beat the best team in the league, in my opinion, in a shootout comeback in frankly unbelievable fashion. And it's hard to look at that game and say they're going to come back into week two and get trapped in a trap game because that might have been what I would have done had the Ravens ended up winning that game because I really do like the Jets for this game. I just think the momentum's too strong for Buffalo and they're not going to be able to withhold it. I'm going to go Buffalo to win this game.
So I'm not sure that I agree with the logic that the defense being the unit that struggled is a good thing.
Well, in terms of like, they're not going to, I don't think the defense is going to struggle throughout the season. I think them struggling in that game was more just a game off or a game to adjust to the Aaron Glenn new style of defense more than it was this is a bad group. Because
No,
they
I
have too
see
many
that, but
players
I
that are
think that
like,
we also see most of the time the trend in week one is low scoring games because teams had an off season away and it's the first game back. Passing games aren't firing yet, offenses aren't firing yet. And both the Jets and the Steelers, credit to them, their offenses were firing. The Jets mostly on the ground and the Steelers mostly through the air. Um, but you have to just wonder when looking at an offensive unit that's not very good in Pittsburgh, does it mean that, yeah, maybe the Jets' offensive group improved, but maybe the defensive group is in for a rough year? And do you just wonder, are they swapping? And is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing?
well, if they
I
are
mean, you saw
swapping,
last year, I think, you saw last year this defense actually, even if they were good in scoring defense, actually was one of the more below average units in the NFL. And I do think that we've gotten better on the front, on the defensive line, specifically the front seven has gone better. I do agree with you. I'm a little bit concerned specifically about that secondary, namely how long does Brandon Stevens get a leash? How good will Michael Carter
And
II
Ahmad
be
Gardner
after a
hasn't
back
earned
injury?
sauce privileges.
He was our highest graded player, and he only allowed one catch, which was probably the most infuriating, insane pinball catch I've ever seen. Because only the Jets have break up a pass, it bounces off a Jet, it bounces off another Steeler, and somehow back to
John
DK
Smith.
Metcalf. Jonnu Smith, who the Dolphins let go. Thanks for that, by the way.
Oh, God damn it.
Um, I think that was probably the most infuriating play. But Sauce has looked great. But other than
I know.
him, it's the rest of the secondary that really does concern me. And I think it wouldn't surprise me at all if you see very, very soon some of the guys that Glenn's brought in through the draft, like Azaria Thomas, who I really liked coming out of the draft, like Malachi Moore in the fourth round. I think those guys could get shots very, very early, and it might not be due to injury.
Let's talk about the Dolphins and the Patriots, the other two teams in this
Mm.
division, both of whom came off of very disappointing losses and are not unsimilar in where they're standing at this point. Miami are at home, but they definitely did have the worst of the two games. I'll let you guys talk about where you are, and then
The
I will.
worst of the two games is generous. It's the
What
worst of
what
the
would you?
32 NFL teams that stepped
Yeah,
on the
sure,
field.
sure. I don't know how necessary that was, but yeah,
Well,
sure.
I'm just throwing it out there. It's not that they both had close, disappointing losses, that
I
the
didn't say
Dolphins were just
that.
slightly worse. The Dolphins were, the Patriots were not great. The
Mhm.
Dolphins were terrible. That's the only reason I bring it up.
I would argue that both of them were terrible, but go on.
I wouldn't at all. The Patriots weren't that bad. The Patriots didn't win the game, and they should be beating the Raiders because the Raiders
Yeah.
aren't great.
At home.
But even if you can call them terrible, what word can you use for the Dolphins? Because the
I'll tell
scale
you.
is very different. And the the Patriots, yes, is a disappointing loss. The Dolphins is just a what the hell was that?
I want you to know that the way I described this was the Dolphins had the worst of the two games. I didn't even say anything other than that.
I know.
Mm.
I know.
I
And I just
respect I
thought that was
respect
even
that.
being generous.
I respect the grilling.
Um,
I
Look, honestly, I don't think the Dolphins. I mean, I don't think anybody thinks the Dolphins are as bad as they were on Sunday. Um, but things could get out of hand in Miami very quickly. One or two more games similar to that, not even necessarily that bad. The season's over. It's a wash. Tyreek is gone. Tua's maybe not the guy at quarterback. The defense needs an entire rebuild, and boom, it you know, it's rebuild mode, and they're not good for 4 more years. Like that's how quickly things can de-escalate in Miami right now. And I don't think that's the same for most teams. It's the way the Dolphins are built. It's look, you can like Mike McDaniel, you cannot like him. I think his time might be up in Miami. I don't think he has been since they made the playoffs 2 seasons ago. I know he's dealt with a lot of injuries. I know he has. And when your quarterback's injured, I do give the coach some grace for that. But at a certain point, you just got to take a step back and say, can we win with this guy? And I just think the answer right now is no, unless something changes soon. And I don't think it will this week. I think the Patriots are going to go to Miami and beat the Dolphins. Maybe an unpopular pick, but I think Drake May is a really impressive guy. Kayshon Boutte really impressed me, if that's how you pronounce it. Um, and I don't think the Dolphins are going to have a chance at stopping them either.
Yeah, I'm not really gonna go much into Miami, fortunately for Dylan, because I think we all know what that was, and that was what I've been talking about. I think this could be one of the worst defenses in the NFL. I think this is an offense that, albeit as talented, is completely out of sync, and I just don't think the cohesion is there that we saw the last 2 years. But I want to talk about New England because this was a team that I feel like I was being gaslighted, where everyone was saying they're going to be a wild card team. They could even maybe
Gaslit.
gaslit. Thank you. I appreciate my grammar being corrected, but I think this was a team that a lot of people had as a shoe-in for the playoffs after their this big offseason. When every time I looked at the roster, I felt like this is the biggest bunch of mid I've ever seen in my life. And I was vindicated when I saw them against the Raiders, where I picked the Raiders to win in one of my few good predictions of the week. Their offensive line is still a big concern to me. I think Will Campbell does not look comfortable right now at guard, at tackle, which I always thought he was a better guard than a tackle. I think defensively, I'm actually very concerned for that secondary outside of Christian Gonzalez, who wasn't healthy last week, which obviously is a big part of that. But you have Craig Woodson and Jalen Hawkins starting with Kyle Duggar being benched. You have Carlton Davis, who did not look that great out there against Vegas either. And a defensive line that I think this is the big strength. This is the one part of the team that I do respect. I do love Christian Barmore. I think Milton Williams looked excellent in his first game, but it's going to be forced to really carry unit, specifically that interior, because I don't think the edges are particularly great either. They're expected to carry a unit that I just don't really think is that good on both sides of the ball. And I think actually Miami, this is gonna be my unpopular pick. I think they're gonna beat the Patriots, and I think the main reason is Tua is undefeated against the Patriots. And look, I've never really been a huge Tua fan, but that is something I'm not gonna argue. I'm not gonna argue against history. I'm not gonna argue against the fact that the Patriots still have a really weak secondary, and as bad as the Dolphins looked, they have one of the. I still feel like a pretty good receiving room. And then I think defensively, that defensive line is not going to get pushed around because I think the Colts offensive line is a vastly superior offensive line to the Patriots. So give me Miami as my upset pick.
I'll first touch on both of these teams' week ones before I talk about this game. This might be a long segment. I apologize to anyone who
Just
has to.
touch on the Pats first.
I will. So the Patriots, to their credit, I thought some of the receivers that I didn't expect to be good were pretty good. I thought Demario Douglas, barring a few drops, was pretty competent in getting open. Kayshon
He
Boutte,
had 2 catches for -2 yards.
he scored a touchdown, no?
Yeah, but he had 2 catches for -2 yards.
Yeah, the touchdown. But
-2 yards.
That's
That's getting
crazy. I had
open.
more yards than him. Like, and he scored a touchdown.
he scored a touchdown. Kayshon Boutte had a very good game,
Yeah, he
and
did.
He
so
did. He had
yeah, he
He
six for
did.
103, sir.
Yeah,
yeah,
I did not know he was that good. My bad.
yeah, and
Yeah.
then Hunter Henry made some impressive catches throughout the game, but I was very unimpressed by the O line, and I was very unimpressed by Drake May. Drake May, as good as I think he can be, he threw a very bad interception on an overthrow, and just a couple of throws in general that he sailed, and it's not something that I really thought was characteristic of him. The defense was far more concerning in my eyes. And I watched this entire game sitting in my history of American football class. I don't condone watching sports in class, but that's what I do.
I do.
They blitzed in places that you would never expected a blitz. I'm talking press coverage on a 3rd down and 3, and the corner guarding the boundary wide receiver goes in and sends the blitz. It was almost like Vrabel had forgotten how to coach in his year hiatus. Very surprising, very uncharacteristic of what should have been a very well coached unit. The defense in general allowed Geno Smith to get away with way too much. And as much as you said that you like their defensive front, Surge, and I agree that on paper I do like their defensive front, they were letting Geno get away with murder. They were. This isn't a good quarterback. This isn't a good team that they allowed to get through them. And they allowed them to get through them. But now let's talk about the real culprit of this week. The worst team of this week. I was going
Could
to
I
say,
interject really quick about the Patriots before you
go ahead.
go Dolphins? I don't mean to post. If you want me to wait, I can.
No, go ahead.
I think it just has to do with exactly what you were just saying. I think the coaching was terrible.
Yes.
I think the coaching needed a lot of work. Defensively, I didn't see as much defensively. I didn't watch so closely. Offensively, why did Drake May throw the ball 46 times when they only scored 13 points?
Well, it's Travion Henderson not really impacting the game that much, and
That's
Ramondre
not true. He had 5 carries for 27 yards.
he
Give
didn't
him
impact
the
the game that
ball,
much.
but
Well,
give him
when
the
you don't
ball
give him
more.
the ball.
But I mean, why are you having May throw 46 times and only running 18 times when you were winning the game at
It's true.
halftime?
It's true. It's true. It's
Who
definitely true.
goes into a game and is winning at halftime and then decides to throw 46 passes?
Oh, I'll tell you who does that. The Miami
Mm.
Dolphins. This is a team that absolutely shit the bed, and I apologize for my language. This was
Hey.
a week one game that you have to go into Indianapolis and win. Indianapolis hadn't won a week one game in 11 years before this game. But this isn't even a team that got beaten. They got their backs blown out. They got absolutely obliterated in every area of football. So, being a Dolphins fan, being the host, I feel like I should go through each and every spot. Let's talk first about the elephant in the room. Daniel Jones was not stopped. None of the Dolphins' defensive drives ended in anything other than points on the board for Indianapolis. There was one drive where they forced a punt, and the carcass of Matthew Judon ran into the punter on a 4th and 3. That would have been the one stop they had. Other than that, they allowed for Jonathan Taylor and DJ Giddens to
Dude,
run
why did Giddens get so
rampant.
many carries, bro?
Because they had
Like,
already
my
won the game in the
fantasy
third quarter.
points.
Besides that, they let second best tight end out of the draft, Tyler Warren, and Michael Pittman catch every pass that was intended for them. I know this is a bad secondary.
No. Pittman had 8 targets to 6 catches, and Warren had 9 targets to 7 catches.
I was speaking in hypotheticals, but not in
Well, you
hypotheticals.
weren't, but
I
it's okay.
was, but
I didn't hear the hypotheticals.
not hypothetical isn't the right word. I was speaking in not absolutes, but they absolutely
Don't do ish, buts, or maybe. I do
walked
absolute.
by them. On the Dolphins defense, it's what some people, not to the degree, but what some people expected. It was a very bad performance from a very bad unit. And while I didn't personally expect the defensive line to struggle as much as they did, the secondary didn't surprise me that much. The linebacking court didn't surprise me that much. The offense was what surprised me a lot. And it starts with the head coach, Mike McDaniel. It starts with the quarterback, Tua Tagovailoa. Neither of them were able to, McDaniel wasn't able to game plan out of a paper bag. Tua wasn't able to throw to an open receiver. He had Jalen Waddle on his bread and butter crosser 5 or 6 times in this game, and he didn't look to him. He didn't hit him. The one time he tried that crosser early in the game to Tyreek, he sailed it for God knows why. That's his throw. That's his throw. I'm not gonna spend too much time on his performance just because I don't think that's something that's gonna happen a lot down the stretch. I think that was a anomaly in a sense that it can't be that bad. We've seen this guy play football. It's never that bad. That was really bad. The interception he threw to Latu was really one of the worst decisions I've seen this quarterback make in the 6 years that I've watched every snap he's played. The game planning and the run game were much more concerning to me because why is it a 4th and 6 and you're calling a screen pass to Tanner Connor? What are
Did you
we?
know that the top five receivers in terms of yardage for the Dolphins all had the amount of yards that ended on a zero? 20, 20, 20, 30, 40.
I did
Exactly.
not know that actually. That's a,
Pretty
that's a
funny,
nice little tidbit.
right?
Keep it even. But the Dolphins just looked.
So those are all really low
Yeah,
numbers.
I'm aware.
This is my question. This is more a question because again, didn't watch the game. Why was Achan not more involved?
Well, it's hard to get HN involved when he's 5'8" and incapable of breaking a tackle.
But they've
So
been doing it for years, and it's not like they
no,
even
they
put the ball in
haven't.
his
No, they
hands.
haven't. They haven't. They haven't been running him between the tackles for years.
No,
This
but I
this
mean
is
in the passing game, he only had four targets.
well when the defense. Well, I'll tell you what. Indianapolis's defense was pretty much solely focused on limiting the deep shot and limiting the slots. Like they were not focused on playing the middle of the field, which is usually where Tua is able to
Right.
make his work. And for whatever reason, he just didn't do that. So HN, every time they would look at him, there would be a linebacker or a defensive end a foot or two away from him. On the touchdown that he scored, that was the case. HN was just able to shake a tackle and make a really good play. But it was just a calamitous performance. There was nothing that made sense. But I digress. It was the worst game I think I've seen from this Dolphins team since the tank for 2 a year. I'll talk about this game against the Patriots at home. I might be coping. They're gonna win this game. I just can't see a world where it continues at the rate that it was in that ungodly performance. I just think they have to. Like, I don't have much in the sense of positives to talk about the Dolphins right now. I just have to believe that it's not going to be that bad. And if it's not that bad, I think they'll beat the Patriots. But let's go through the Bengals and the Jaguars, two first overall picks who had shockingly different results than expected.
Two
The
first overall picks in this one.
Yeah, two first overall
Some forgetting about.
quarterbacks. But Joe Burrow versus Trevor Lawrence. Who would have expected Trevor to be the better quarterback week 1? But give me what you guys got for this one.
Yeah, I mean, just looking back at that, I mean, I kind of got it wrong and right that Bengals Browns game last week. I said Cleveland were going to win mainly because I
Yeah.
thought that defense was going to put the game in the hands of the Bengals defense because we see what week one Cincinnati looks like. And week one Cincinnati, at least on the offensive side of the ball, showed up. Joe Burrow had what, 113 yards passing, kind of completely took Jamar Chase out of the game. And the Bengals only put up 17 points. So you assume that even with the Browns offense, you think the Bengals defense is not going to be able to step up when they're needed and Cleveland walk away with a week one win. But the Bengals defense, to their credit, showed up, namely a few guys. I'm going to shout out a few guys. Obviously, we know how important Trey Hendrickson to this team. Shamar Stewart was I believe, the second highest graded player on the team. And while he didn't really have much of an impact on the box score, when you look back at the film, he was wrecking havoc on every play. He was so involved, specifically in the run defense. He was so involved at least putting pressure on the quarterback. And I think he's someone that is going to have a bigger impact year one than a lot of us expect him to. Another player that had a great impact, Logan Wilson, who, when this defense was good, Logan Wilson was one of the linchpins to this
He
defense. So
wasn't.
if he is at his best, I think that is a huge good sign for the Cincinnati defense in general. So, and I thought their secondary it wasn't amazing, but it was fine. It was fine. I thought DJ Turner showed up in big moments. I thought he was okay. I thought Dax Hill surprisingly had a good game at nickel. Meanwhile, when you look at Jacksonville, like you said, Trevor Lawrence had the better game of the two. I thought Travis Hunter, they didn't have to throw the ball a lot. Obviously, they also had that big weather delay, and Jacksonville went up pretty quickly, so they were running the ball a lot. But I do think that him and BTJ are going to be one of the best receiver tandems in the entire NFL. I like them defensively, but I think going against Cincinnati that now have just they've gotten their week one jitters, week one classic offensive performance out of the way. I think this is going to be a much better Cincinnati offense. I trust that this defense is going to be, I guess maybe this is a week one overreaction, but I trust that this defense is going to be able to at least maybe limit this Jaguars offense. So I'm going to go with Cincinnati here.
Yeah, I'm also going to take the Bengals. I think you summed it up pretty well of these teams week ones. I wasn't expecting Bengals and Browns to be as close as it was. I also wasn't expecting the Jaguars to really blow the Panthers out of the water. That being said, the Panthers haven't been very good in the last few years, so it's not impossible, and we saw it happen. Bengals at home. I don't think the Jaguars walk out of this one with a win, so I am going to go Bengals here. Uh, yeah, I just don't see how the Jaguar secondary is going to be able to really you know, hold up much against Jamar Chase and against T. Higgins and Chase Brown. I don't see how many secondaries in the league can. Um, and obviously, I think, yeah, the Browns were just another team that wasn't really in sync last week. Didn't really get their passing game going, but I expect them to get it going soon. And I think the Jaguars in Cincinnati is a perfect opportunity too.
I don't think much of the Bengals. I think this is one of the games that they should win. I'm not high on Jacksonville either, but I'm very low on the Bengals. And even though they did beat Cleveland, I feel a sense of vindication that they were as bad as I expected them to be. That was a Bengals team that had, I believe, 6 net yards in the entire second half against the Cleveland defense. They're not a good team, but I think Burrow and Chase and Higgins are going to be able to out firepower what the Jaguars have on the flip side of the ball enough to get them one of their very few wins this season. I don't really have too much to say about it. I'm not particularly high on either of these groups. The Saints and the Niners is the next game. This could be a game with completely different quarterbacks. Rattler is the starter in New Orleans, and it's looking like it might be a Mac Jones 49ers team. Does that work for San Francisco? Is he the type of quarterback that would
I
fire off
think
for them?
they can survive with him. I think they can for at least a few weeks. I was someone who was very low on the Niners going into week one. I think there's one thing that I didn't account for. Robert Saleh and him being one of the best defensive minds in the NFL because I think he's just completely elevated to this unit to what the personnel says that it is. I think he's like getting the most out of guys like Yetur Gross-Matos, Sam O Okuayino. I think I don't want to mispronounce that, but I definitely did. Getting Bryce Huff back to at least a solid level player, and then you're seeing guys that really have emerged. Like D Winters had one of his best games, of his career at linebacker, which could be huge next to Fred Warner. So I think this is a defense that will be able to keep afloat. And again, like I said, I'm low on New Orleans. You know that that's not really changed. I know they still have a few ageless wonders like Cam Hayward and Demario Davis, but I just think that offense still is too dire with Rattler as the quarterback. So I'm gonna go with San Francisco here. Not comfortably necessarily, but their defense will do the job.
Yeah, it's a pretty easy Niners pick for me here. Another thing that it's easy to forget about is just how good Christian McCaffrey is when he's healthy. It's a guy who impacts the game on every single level, especially now with a backup quarterback in. Uh, it'll be McCaffrey City for, I, I don't really know what that means, but for all 4 quarters, it'll be game centered around McCaffrey, especially considering, they lost Debo in the offseason. Ayuk is injured. Now George Kittle is injured, and now Brock Purdy is injured too. McCaffrey's their only skill position player that's actually a starter that's healthy. And it's crazy because it's Christian McCaffrey who's almost never healthy, or it feels like he's almost never healthy. But this game will be run through him. And I agree, Surridge. Defensively, they looked impressive, and they will be able to, uh, they should be able to more than comfortably be able to, hold the Saints to less than 15 or so, and that should be enough to get the job done.
I think the Saints are a little bit undervalued in most people's minds as a team. They're not a good team by any means, and Rattler's not good. But I don't think this team will necessarily be the worst in the league. They've got some veteran pieces that I think just carry a little more weight than people remember them carrying. Let's talk Cam Jordan, Demario Davis, Alvin Kamara. These are guys that have been in the league for a long time and are still very good players. On the defensive side of the ball for New Orleans, there is just that little bit of forgetfulness that these are guys that have been here for a while. They are a competent unit. They're not a good unit, a great unit, anything by those terms. But if Mac Jones plays for San Francisco this week, I would not be surprised if New Orleans wins this game. And I don't know what the expectation is for Purdy. I don't know if I would even pick them. I'm not going to pick them to win just because there's too many glaring negatives in the team. I just think that they're getting looked past a little bit too much for my liking. Is that ridiculous to say? Is that
No,
agreeable?
I get that. And I do think the defense is capable of like maybe like carrying them to a win, especially against a Mac Jones team where he could be very prone to turnovers. I just think that the Niners are probably too well coached, I think,
Yeah,
on both
I
sides of the
agree.
ball. They've got too much offensive firepower, where I think, although no George Kittle, no George Kittle to be fair, but I
That
still think when you have weapons like, I think, actually, I mean, I maybe
you know what?
I
You know,
still
I'll do
trust
it.
that.
I'll do it.
I still
I'll
trust
do
that.
it. I'll do it.
I'm sticking with the Niners, but
Wait,
I'm
wait,
less
wait, wait.
confident now that I
What's
say it.
what's Purdy's status before I do it?
I don't think
I
he's
believe
expected
he's
to
not
play.
playing.
I don't
Okay,
think he's
I'm
expected to
doing it.
play.
I'm picking the Saints to win this game.
Okay,
I'm
fair
picking the
enough.
Saints to win.
Fair.
Fire.
You know
Easy
what?
point.
That's fair. That's fair. That's fair.
All right, let's talk about the actual worst team in the league, the Cleveland Browns, going to play against the Baltimore Ravens. The Browns look pretty decent for all things considered on the defensive side of the ball against the Bengals, but the kicking woes, the offensive woes, everything just seemed to fall apart for Cleveland in so many different aspects of the game. Going to Baltimore, it seems like a pretty straightforward pick. I'm going with the Ravens.
Yeah, Ravens pretty easily, and this is really only going to be a big thing, a big game for one reason alone. Can this Ravens defense get right? Because I think that was the main reason why so many of us have them as Super Bowl favorites in the entire NFL is because we thought this defense was really going to step up and be one of the premier units like they were 2 seasons ago with Mike McDonald. Because let's be honest, we know that Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, this offense can carry a team to wherever it wants to go. But can this defense keep up like they were 2 years ago, or will they have kind of that downstretch like we saw the first half of last season as well? So I think it's gonna be a big week for the secondary, big week for this defense in general, and I think they'll step up. Especially against, I mean, going from Josh Allen to Joe Flacco is definitely the adjustment that a team that is struggling needs. So give me Baltimore comfortably.
Yeah, I'm gonna go also with the Ravens. There's a reason this is, the game with the largest spread, I believe, of the week. The Ravens are the biggest favorites in the NFL this week, and there's a reason for that. The Ravens are really good. The Browns are really bad. This shouldn't be a close one. We're in Baltimore, and the Ravens will be hungry for the first win of the season.
The Bears and the Lions is the next game, and Charlie, I know you have a lot of
Oh,
Oh no.
unearned hate
Oh
towards the
no.
quarterback.
unearned.
Unearned. Unearned. I still think Caleb Williams is a good quarterback. Sue me. But the Lions and the
Unearned.
Bears is a team of two teams that need to get right. Like the Lions got burned on both sides of the ball. The Bears had a lead, blew it to JJ McCarthy somehow. But
Hey.
I mean, JJ McCarthy
Respect
somehow.
JJ
He's
McCarthy.
already better than Caleb will be.
all right,
Thank
that's
you. Thank you.
ridiculous. That
Thank
is
you.
ridiculous.
I I don't think this is a matter of the Bears needing to get right. I think this is the Bears.
Nah.
Um, this is
Nah.
how good the Bears are.
I don't agree.
They're not a good football team.
I don't agree in the slightest.
You don't have to. It's my opinion.
But
Um,
this is a world where we can have healthy debate, right?
no, absolutely it is. Look, Caleb started the game really well. I can put up a hand and say he started really well. The way he finished the game was disastrous. It was so bad. Um, I mean, I think he started, what was it, 11 for 11
10
and
for 10, I think.
10 for 10, and then from then on was 11 for 25. Um, and that watching the fourth quarter, he missed just about every ball that he threw, including the one that Cole Kmet caught. He missed. He was missing passes left and right and mostly up. He was not good, and McCarthy capitalized, and McCarthy had a great fourth quarter on the other hand. Talk about a clutch quarterback who actually won something in college.
Amen. Amen.
That's not an individual award. Um, JJ McCarthy thoroughly impressed me, and I will put that there. And Caleb Williams did not, and he continues to not impress me. Um, Especially considering the Bears' offensive line, I believe is tapped to be pretty good this season. Um, at least they thought it would be pretty good. They've got tackles that seem to be pretty good. I know they shifted the interior. Um, Luther Burden was out there doing cardio the whole game. It was ridiculous. They had him running in motions on every single snap just to get one catch for -3 yards on one target. Um, it's kind of crazy to me. Loveland didn't do much. Cole Kmet just made the one catch that Caleb overthrew him on. Odunze impressed me more than I was expecting. I'll throw that out there. Um, to go to the other side, the Lions need a win more than the Bears do. Absolutely, they do. The Lions have a really tough start to the season, and the Bears at home is just about as easy as it'll get. Not saying it's an easy game by any means, but looking at the rest of their schedule, it's the easiest they're going to get, and they will get this win comfortably. This defense, now that it's back to healthy, now that it's not as injured as it was towards the end of last year, should give Caleb fits. I wouldn't be surprised if he threw 6 interceptions this weekend.
I think you'd be pretty
All right, I
surprised.
think you would be a bit surprised.
Only kidding. I'm gonna say the Lions win this game comfortably.
Yeah.
That's my realistic, genuine prediction.
Yeah, I mean, again, I just referenced how high I was on the Lions this season, and I feel like I still am, but were some real concerns about that week one game against the Packers because for the past few years, since like year two, year three of the Dan Campbell era, I've gotten used to the Lions being the team that pushes you around in the trenches, the team that dominates at that aspect of the game, and that's why they've beaten up on the NFC North the past few years. That did not look like the case week one at all. That interior, honestly, that offensive line as a whole for Detroit, which we come to expect them as one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, they looked weak compared to the Packers defensive line, which was a unit that we were not that high on. I thought Penei Sewell had one of his worst games of his career as a professional. He did not look that great. Taylor Decker looked like how old he is. I think he's like in his 30s, 31, 32. And that revamped interior still has a ways to go. You have two new starters in Tate Ratledge and Christian Mahogany. And I feel like me personally, I might have undersold significantly the loss of Frank Ragnow to that offensive line as a whole. So I really think it's definitely, I think they're going to figure it out, but it's going to take time. I still think they're a good offensive line. Defensively, it's also going to take a few weeks because that is probably, in terms of depth, at least on the edge, they're going to need some time because Aiden Hutchinson, you can tell he is still coming back from that from that injury, and he's not going to be the same player off the edge at least for the first few weeks of the season. So I think the Bears are going to keep it close. I think they're going to make it annoyingly it's going to be an annoying game for the Lions, but I think they're going to find a way to win, mainly because, like you said, I do think Caleb Williams looks so spotty with his accuracy. He's a quarterback that needs to be in rhythm to be accurate. And I think if you throw him off his rhythm, which he inevitably will at some point, I think you have Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph, two of the safeties that will capitalize on that. And I think that's going to be the difference in this game. Lions win it in a close one.
I think the Bears have a lot of places where they're more talented than Detroit. You look at, in my opinion, in all grace and honesty, I think the quarterback room, they're more talented. I think Caleb Williams is a more talented quarterback than Jared Goff, and given the right pieces and situation, will be the better quarterback than Jared Goff. I think on the defensive side of the ball, they have the best corner in this game. They have arguably the best wide receiver room in this game. They have a lot of good things to go for them. They have the offensive coordinator that was in Detroit last year and as their head coach, and that should be a lot and enough to push them over the line in this game. I really do believe in Chicago going into this year. The problem is that Dan Campbell is a psychopath, and I wouldn't be surprised if he has Ben Johnson's cadences written on his arm. I think this is going to be a game where Detroit is just going to match everything Chicago do and do it to a T. It's kind of an unwinnable game, in my opinion, just because everyone in Detroit knows everything that's going to go down in Chicago. It's not like Ben Johnson went out
They
there.
also have the added benefit of the other team's quarterback not being very good.
I wouldn't go to that extent. I think, I will say, I think Caleb Williams played a bad game of football against the Vikings, and I don't think he's lived up to, can you let me talk, man?
Oh
I,
man.
I I don't think I don't think he's lived up to his draft stock at this point, but there's a lot of football left to a lot of football left to be played in his career. And for someone who hasn't succeeded at a rate that I've expected him to, his pocket movement, his ability to escape a pocket is something that doesn't just come with any quarterback. That this is a skill amongst the best in the league at this skill, if not the best. He has a very, very good arm. He has very, very good off-platform motion. It's just can he fix the mental mistakes? And I think he will, but I don't think it'll happen this game. I think Detroit wins the game. Let's go to Denver versus Indianapolis, where both teams came off of big wins. Indianapolis with a bigger win, but still two teams that I think have legitimate holes that need to be looked into. What do you guys have?
Yeah, I'm gonna actually channel my inner Charlie, but for a different second year quarterback. My Bo Nix hate agenda, I feel like, went very well week one. He was, I think, graded the worst starting quarterback in the NFL week one, and it showed. He had a couple of terrible, I had three turnovers, two pretty bad interceptions. He didn't look that great. And I think, to be fair, he doesn't have the strongest receiving room outside of Cortland Sutton. They're really expecting a lot out of Marvin Mims, Troy Franklin, Pat Bryant. I think if he does see the field, I don't know if he really did much week one, but I am not as moved as Bo Nix as a lot of guys. A lot of guys. I think he is really someone who is specifically a system quarterback. He goes as the system goes. He goes as his receivers go. And I think that's going to be a big part of week two. I think, albeit they're going to have a better game against Indianapolis. I do think that this isn't a particularly strong secondary when you're starting Xavier Howard in the year of 2025. So I think he'll have a better game, and I think this defense will. I think it will be a wake up call for Indianapolis going from the Miami front to the Denver front, albeit they aren't the strongest in terms of like they're not the beefiest front in the league, but Daniel Jones is definitely not going to have all day to throw like he did in week one, and I think for that reason, he's going to turn the ball over a few times. I think that'll be the difference. Denver win it, and again, an unexpectedly tight game.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Denver definitely have the edge on this one, and I'm surprised by the Bo Nix hate. Bo Nix is actually a guy that I really liked last year. I know
I,
you weren't a big fan of his. Um, I just think he he plays with a certain like knowledge of the game and a certain skill set that really suits. Why are you laughing, bro?
I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I just
It
disagree with
really
it so
suits the way
vehemently.
that Denver play. Um, I think they need to figure out the run game, whether it's, Harvey or Dobbins, because Harvey, I think, got a bulk of the carries, but Dobbins
Yeah.
scored.
I just saw that
Um,
one carry from Harvey on the
yeah, he
50-yard.
exploded.
Yeah.
Oh, he actually, no, that's so wrong. Dobbins had the bulk of the carries.
Mhm.
Harvey had almost nothing, but turned it into like 70 yards. Um, so I think that that's something you need to get figured out. I really like Cortland Sutton. Marvin Mims is not a great two. So they need to figure that out. But defensively, this is probably the best unit in the NFL. And Daniel Jones won't just, yeah, just won't have the freedom that he had last week, as you said. So I'm also going to go with the Broncos here. Um, Not necessarily comfortably. I think it could be a really close game, especially considering Indy is at home. But I will go with the Broncos in a close one.
Yeah, give me the Colts, man. I can't
Hmm.
I can't see what I saw and in good conscience pick against a team that I don't think that highly of. I'm not bought in on Bo Nix or the Broncos in the slightest, and I'm even less so after seeing what they were defensively able to do to Tennessee and still be in that game with a minute left. I think that Indianapolis definitely have some holes, like the secondary for certain. The even the defensive front, I don't think that the Grover Stewart led defensive front is necessarily a great unit, but I think the offense is going to be pretty good. The offensive line is awesome, and I think Shane Steichen is the type of coach that can capitalize on a quarterback like Daniel Jones, who has clear deficiencies, but if you coach around them, you could still go out there and win a lot of football games. Home game two, you know what? Screw it. Give me Indianapolis. But the Panthers and the Cardinals take each other on in the next one. Another matchup of two first overall quarterbacks, Kyler Murray and Bryce Young, both of whom had pretty disappointing week ones, although Kyler was able to go out there and get the win. Again, not to the same scale, but who do you guys have winning this game?
Yeah, I mean, I was disappointed in Carolina. I was honestly pretty disappointed in Carolina just because you know what I think. I mean, I'm relatively high on Bryce. I wouldn't say I'm super high on Bryce. Like I think he'll be a top 10 quarterback, but I think he is someone that is a solid quarterback in the NFL right now. And he did not have a great performance, albeit I do know that he did have his number two wide receiver out of the game with Jalen Coker, and he did have Adam Thielen traded away as well. So I'm willing to give him some grace, but I thought he was very disappointing. And you're going against the Cardinals defense, which I am very high on. Will Johnson, by the way, one of the best debuts of any rookie in the NFL this week. I think was I don't know if he was the highest grade cornerback, but I think he was certainly among them. He was like in the 90s for his PFF grade, and I think he's someone who's just going to be one of the best corners in the NFL very, very soon, if not this year. We've seen rookie cornerbacks do it before. And I'm just a lot higher on this Cardinals defense than any other unit in this game. And I do think that this Cardinals offense is still pretty good, at least with early season Kyler Murray. So at home, give me the Cardinals here.
Yeah, I mean, Marv was super impressive too. That's
Mhm.
a guy who, I mean, I've been high on all offseason, drafted him in just about every fantasy league I could, and he was really impressive. And the Cardinals, you said it, as a whole, were pretty impressive in week one. I'm with you though. I'm a big Bryce Young believer. Again, not necessarily think he's going to be a top 5 or 10 quarterback one day, but I do think that he has been a victim of just the team hasn't been very good in the last couple of years. Last week, yeah, Coker was out, Thielen was gone, um, and I guess we'll see. But I'm also going to take the Cardinals in this one. I don't think the Panthers are good enough yet as an entire team. Their defense is just not strong enough. Their offense isn't strong enough. The Cardinals should win this one.
I'm also going to go with Arizona. I like what they've done on the defensive side of the ball, and although it didn't really click right away against New Orleans, I think another game, another rep with the guys together will, all in all, probably make them the better team. They were the better team than Carolina this week, that's for sure. Carolina had so many issues in that first half, and I get that the delay made the game a little bit different after it, but Bryce Young looked really bad. I'm someone who believes in Bryce Young. He looked really bad. Tedero and McMillan didn't look to do that much. The run game wasn't there. The defense wasn't there. They lost to a bad Jacksonville team by a big margin. So I'm going to go with Arizona to win this game. But the Super Bowl rematch is America's game of the week. Eagles, Chiefs, both teams who I would say sleptwalked a little bit in their games, but I'll let you guys take it away before I get to myself.
Yeah, and one team actually got punished for it, and that's the Kansas City Chiefs. And the reason why is pretty simple. They are on paper not a very good football team. Obviously I know they have arguably the best quarterback in the NFL, but defensively, that was, I mean, they only gave up 27 points, but Justin Herbert was walking them down all game long. And honestly, I really think that it's not going to get any better. Even if Jalen Hurts is a worse quarterback, you have probably one of, I feel like, the weakest defensive fronts in terms of running the ball, in terms of defending the run. Your interior duo is Chris Jones and Derek Nottie. Derek Nottie, who got cut from the Jets interior defensive line. And that, I think, is a pretty big, it says a lot, I would say. Not cut, actually traded, but he was going to be cut, just so you know. I think that says a lot about what this Chiefs defensive line is right now. I'm not that moved by Amenahu coming off an ACL and George Karlaftis as well. I think it's a really concerning Chiefs defensive front. I think the secondary also outside of McDuffie, I'm not sure really what to like. I was a fan of Jaden Hicks, but I okay, I'm being too harsh. I still am. I like Jaden Hicks, but I still think he has a bit of a ways to go after that week one performance. And I think Philadelphia, we saw Jalen Hurts. He probably looked more decisive than I've seen him look in the past few years. Was getting the ball out quick, was getting the ball out accurately, and obviously we know what they can do on the ground. So I think they're going to be able. Honestly, I could see this being very similar to their Super Bowl matchup, just because I just don't think Kansas City can hang with this Eagles roster. So give me Philadelphia.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think they both definitely had their week one jitters. Um, the Eagles still ended up getting the win. The Chiefs suffered a loss to the Chargers, who we can talk about later on Monday night. Um, and I think this game will be, like you said, similar to that Super Bowl game. Maybe not so bad because it's not the Super Bowl and they don't feel the need to pile it on. But I just think you're looking at a game where it's the best player in the NFL going up against the most well-built team in the NFL and the best team, best roster. And it's hard for me to pick Mahomes and the Chiefs in this one. So I'm gonna take the Eagles. Look, the Eagles struggled last week, but that was without Jalen Carter, um, and week one. So I'm gonna take the Eagles here comfortably.
I actually really disagree with you, Serge, that this team in Kansas City is not good on paper. They have a lot of really good skill position players that are injured, and when they get back, they will
Yeah,
be
that's why I'm saying I want
a
to preface that
force.
right now. Right now they are.
But more than that, the trenches, the linebacking core, the secondary, is still just as good as it was before. I don't think that this is a bad football team on paper by any means. And I don't think that it necessarily stacks up against the Eagles as less than. They have a lot of weaknesses that the Eagles also have. Like the secondary in Philadelphia isn't good. I'm not shy to say that. We saw Dory Jackson play a lot of snaps of football. That's not good for a championship contender. And I didn't think the interior offensive line in Philadelphia did nearly good enough of a job in helping Saquon Barkley out in the way that it had in past seasons, where I think, especially against a team with Chris Jones and other really good pieces in the linebacking room like Drew Tranquil, who can get to gaps very well, Philadelphia's going to struggle. And I actually think I'm going to pick Kansas City to win this game, even with the deficiencies that they're going to have on the offensive side of the ball. I like certain things in the defense, the way they stack up against Philly, and I like certain things in Kansas City's passing offense that don't do well, that will do well against Philly's secondary. So give me KC. Nothing.
No, nothing.
I,
I
I,
was
I,
just
I
waiting for you
see
to go to the next
I
one.
see I see smiling faces waiting for my downfall.
I was waiting
But
for your next game.
let's talk about Michael Penix against JJ McCarthy. And I'll tell you, it's kind of difficult for JJ McCarthy to play football when he doesn't know the opposing team's playbook. I didn't think
Boo.
he had a particularly
Boo.
great performance on Monday night. His fourth quarter was very good, but there's three other quarters of football if you're not playing against the cluster blank that is Chicago football every year, finding a way to screw up. They're not winning that game. You look at a pick six that was thrown that was just very bad. And a lot of really bad football altogether for Minnesota, which is why I'll go first. I'm going to pick the Falcons to win this game.
Mm.
I'm bought in by Michael Penix after seeing what I saw. Even though they lost that game, he played with dog in his heart, and they didn't even run the ball even nearly as much as they should, having or run the ball as well as they should, having Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier
Oh,
being
come
that
on,
run
dude, it's
game.
Bijan.
It's Bijan.
I know he said it's not, but he pronounces his name wrong, bro.
I'm gonna pronounce the guy's name the way he wants it pronounced. Apologies, but even with the potential loss of Drake London, I think that Atlanta have encapsulated something on offense that not a lot of teams know how to keep up with, which is a very, very good running back, not only in the run game, but also in the receiving game. Bijan Robinson had over 100 receiving yards in that game, which is pretty much just McCaffreyism. And I don't think that Minnesota's defense, as good as it could be, are suited to keep up with that. So give me Atlanta.
Yeah, just watching that Monday night game, it was the exact encapsulation of why you keep JJ McCarthy over Sam Darnold. And that's not to do with JJ McCarthy's performance. I think this team right now is built to compete for a Super Bowl. And I said this all offseason. That's why you keep JJ McCarthy, so you can build an elite roster around him. And bear in mind, this is a team with quite a few significant injuries, at least going into week one. But now you have a team that is probably one of the more strong offensive lines in the NFL with Donovan Jackson in the draft and adding the Colts duo Will Fries and Ryan Kelly in free agency. You're getting back Christian Darrisaw. You'll get back Jordan Addison. I know that's not for this week, but this is a team that is built elite in both trenches. By the way, I with the another addition of Javon Hargrave. I'm just gonna stop listing the additions, but they are built so strong across the board. I think they can go man for man with any team in the NFL. And I think for that reason, especially if I do think Jared will be back for week two, I think they go on to win at home against the Falcons. I think they're just too strong. And I think Atlanta, they've got so many guys that are banged up. I think London's banged up. Mooney didn't make it for week one. I don't know if he'll be there for week two. That offensive line, obviously, you lost Caleb McGarry before the season starts. I think Jonathan Grenard will have the game that he wasn't able to have against the Bears week one. So, yeah, give me the Vikings here.
Yeah, I'm with you, Serge. And I actually, Dylan, you mentioned Penix looked really good. He did. He had that
Mhm.
dog in him, but JJ McCarthy looked very good as well. And I think that Penix looked better throughout the entire game. But when it comes down to the fourth quarter, JJ McCarthy put on a clinic and Younghoe Koo choked yet again. Obviously, that's not on Penix, but I'm going to take the Vikings here. I just think that, in an atmosphere like Minnesota, the team, their roster looks really, really strong. look for them to get Jefferson even more involved than he was. I think they have a really good shot at winning a lot of games this year, even with, really rookie quarterback JJ at the helm. I really like what I've seen from them so far. So yeah, give me the Vikings.
Last two games, both on Monday night. The Texans and the Bucks, two teams that had very different results for teams that I thought were in very similar positions going into this week. Who do you guys have?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Houston this one, and I know I picked Houston week one, and I clearly haven't learned my lesson. But again, I'm gonna go back to it. I think the Bucks are another team that have looked very banged up. Um, I know they went on to win against Atlanta, and they are a good team. I don't know if I trust that offense right now because don't will they have Wirfs for week two? I actually don't know. But I don't know if that offensive line is going to be able to hold up against this Texans elite duo of Will Anderson and Daniil Hunter. I don't know how Baker's going to look when he already looks shaky against Atlanta, how he's going to look against this Texans defense as well. And I've learned my lesson. I don't think the Texans offensive line is going to be a good again or probably even serviceable to that point. But I do think Nico Collins is going to have a big game because he was kind of shut down by that Rams defense. And I think he's someone who's inevitably going to go off because that's the type of receiver he is. So Houston at home, give me the Texans.
Yep, I mean exactly what you said. I think Houston at home, Nico Collins, big game, need it for fantasy. Also, just think he's a great, great receiver. I've been saying it for, as long as we can really remember. So yeah, give me Houston at home. I really liked though for the Bucks, Emeka Egbuka looked really, really good in week one with the absence of Chris Godwin. And I don't necessarily think the Texans will be able to stop him. Obviously, Stingley is a premier corner in the NFL, but opposite him, I don't know that it's anything special. So when you got to deal with Mike Evans and Egbuka, and I don't know if Godwin's back yet. Um, it causes problems. And so I'm gonna take the I'm sorry, and so. However, I'm gonna take the Texans in this one. I don't think the Bucks defense will be able to stop the Texans.
Did you see Igbuka called his own shot for the
I did see
touchdown?
that. I did see that.
Unbelievable. On the, what was it, third down play, he called his own number for a post route for a touchdown. A very, very cool story. I'm also going to take Houston. Their defense is just too good to lose two games in a row. They held the Rams to 14 points and they still managed to lose that football game. No touchdowns. I have a hard time believing that will happen again. Nico Collins was very, very isolated in that game. That, again, won't happen again. I think Houston will have their wits together and figure out a way to win this game against Tampa, who I said it in the last video. I think Tampa are legit Super Bowl contenders. This is a hard game to win going to Houston. Raiders and Chargers, I feel like we should all be pretty straightforward with who wins this game. Although the Raiders have happened to
Really?
have,
I
yeah,
disagree with that. Yeah.
I'm not high on Vegas. They've happened to have the Chargers number in the past, but I don't see it with them. Geno's not particularly good. The defense is not particularly good. I'm going the Chargers pretty heavily here.
I can't imagine how you still hate on Geno after having one of the best, if not the best, quarterback performance
Oh,
of week
I
one.
imagine not having one of the best, if not the best, quarterback performance in week one when they're blitzing random
But
corners for
also,
no
Serge, are
reason.
you not gonna still be hating on Aaron Rodgers despite having the best
And
quarterback
Daniel
performance in week
Jones.
one?
A dot of 4, by the way, in week one. He barely threw the ball past the line of scrimmage. I will be hating. But anyways,
Right.
I
So
think go ahead. No, no, I will not say it. I will not say it. And Gino had a better game. But Gino, objectively, that's not even my hater. And he had over 300 passing yards. He was someone who
actually four
pushed the ball downfield a
touchdowns.
lot more.
No,
Yeah,
but
I know. 4 touchdowns. Had a
the
good game.
the pushing downfield wasn't necessarily making impressive throws. There were some strikes. I will say there were some strikes, but a lot of these were either blown coverages or bad play calls defensively that left guys streaking open. I think Rodgers had a better game, having watched both. But
I'm gonna go into this one. This is probably the most actually funny enough, the most 50-50. I still don't really know who to pick in this one. Um, the difference maker for me, why I'm gonna pick Vegas, I think not Vegas, sorry. Why I'm gonna pick Los Angeles is because if Justin Herbert's playing like that all season, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. I don't expect him to play like that all season, but against the Vegas secondary, which is still very suspect when you're starting Cube, Blue, Kelly, Eric Stokes, and Darnay Holmes at corner, and maybe we're getting an improved Quentin Johnson. I think Keenan Allen still has a little bit left in the tank, and obviously we all like Lad McConkey, I assume. So I think for that reason, I think they're gonna have a similar game to Kansas City. They're gonna be able to push the ball downfield pretty well and neutralize Max Crosby with when you have Joe Alt, who looks like he's on track to be one of the best um, tackles in the NFL right now. So for that reason, I'm going to go with Los Angeles here, and I do think their defense will step up. And like Dylan said, this is a much better coach defense than the Patriots are. So yeah, give me Los Angeles.
Not just a much better coach defense, just a much better team as a whole. The Chargers are. I think they've actually built their roster really well over the last couple seasons, and the last step they needed, the last thing to complete the puzzle, was Justin Herbert to start playing at that level. And Justin Herbert's been a guy who's played very close to that level for a long time, but the team hasn't been complete, so everything was just a tick off. And now it looks like maybe there's a chance that that tick isn't off anymore, and they could really go out and compete for this division, especially if the Chiefs start 0-2 and the Chargers start 2-0. That's 2 games up. That's a big leg up in a division race that should be pretty closely fought between three teams, depending on people's stances. There are three solid enough contenders for this division. I know people aren't super high on the Broncos, but at the very least, the Chiefs and Chargers should really be battling it out. And I look forward to that return trip to Kansas City. It should be a big one.
You know what I think the missing piece of the puzzle in LA might be? I don't think Herbert was ever necessarily the missing piece. I don't think he was as high in quarterback rankings for me as he was for other people even. Quentin Johnston. If that guy
Mm.
could play football, like a first round pick should play football, and like he did last week.
Even if like he plays like a third round receiver plays football because that would be huge for Herbert. Sorry, I interrupt you. I just want to
No,
say
no, no. Even that works. If they could have him and McConkey on point playing good football down the stretch, I think that this team could challenge for the division. And I'm not super high on Herbert comparatively to where the rest of the league is. I think he's a top 10 quarterback, but
And worse than Tua, right?
that's as far as I'll go. I think they're in the same realm. I would say that right now it's hard to say Tua is a better quarterback than Herbert. I won't definitively say yes or no, but
Sorry.
it's I will say that LA are in a very good spot right now, and the way that their defense is playing, and the way that even though Marion Hampton didn't have a great statistical game, I thought he ran really well. They're built very well, and they'll definitely take care of business against Vegas. That'll be all for this episode of the Back Pocket Podcast. I went for over an hour and a half, I want to say,
Hmm.
but that's just how it goes when it's us three. When Kean's here, he kind of moves us along a little bit, but we kind of nerd out when it's just the three of us. I felt like even I was getting out nerded, which is kind of crazy. But
Yeah, nerd.
that'll be what it'll be. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow us everywhere that we don't post. Love y'all. Peace.